Good afternoon, listeners. I am so excited because this afternoon I have a wonderful guest in studio with me, Dr. Goldson from Goldson
Spine Rehabilitation Center.
Quite a mouthful, and I like it. Welcome to Real Life, Real Talk, Dr. Goldson.
Kadene, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
You know, I'm excited to talk to you. And let me tell you why. A few weeks ago, I was driving and listening to the midday meditation, of course, with Norman. And you had an interview with him that afternoon. And you were talking about something, and it should have been chiropractic things. But the interview started and it didn't sound like you were talking about chiropractic things. But it sounded like you were speaking my language. You're talking about energy. And I was listening completely intrigued, trying to figure out, okay, how is this going to move from that to chiropractic?
Right.
But also it was gripping because I was just, oh my goodness, it felt like it was so perfectly aligned. You hear that?
Yeah,
pun intended.
I'm going to use that one.
With how I think and the things that interest me. And I remember stopping at a stoplight and sending a message to Norman going, oh my God, I have to meet Dr. Goldson. So I've been waiting for
I
this.
appreciate it. And we spoke on the phone a couple of weeks ago. So I've been looking forward to it as well.
Yes.
Because, you know, Casey, it's the energy after you're a chiropractor for a week, right? You realize that there is energy is real.
Yes.
It's real. It's a real thing. And then you can and then after you practice for longer than a week, you can put it into more practical terms, like the ability for us to see each other, the ability for us to sit here, stand here, is a neurological connection from our brain to different parts of our body that without energy, it would never be possible in a earthly sense.
I get it. I understand now fully that we're all energy. And for me, there are things that I subscribe to and that I embrace now that I had no idea about 15 years ago.
So can I ask you a question then?
Sure.
So when did you start to open yourself up, or even start recognizing that outside of the physical things that you see and feel, that there are levels to that?
So I think that there's a part of me that always knew it before I consciously became aware of it. And I'll explain a little bit about that further in a little bit. But it was, let me say, probably 2014 was the first time something happened. I was going through this incredibly difficult period. Something had just happened and I was so extremely stressed. And I'd just gotten some information that just floored me about a loved one. And I remember and I just had surgery a couple weeks before. And I remember being in my bedroom with my hands on my head thinking, Jesus Christ. And just tears just flowing. And I'd been reading a book that a friend of mine, one of my best friends, she's a Christian, had given to me. Trying to remember the name of that book. And I have it. But every time I need to recall it, it evades me. That's okay. And the book was on the foot of the bed, nowhere near the edge. And I was walking back because I was pacing, and the book just fell on the floor in front of me. And I stopped and I looked up and I started, through my tears, I started to chuckle. And I looked up and I said, clearly you want me to read. So I'm going to read. And I picked up the book, settled myself on the bed, leaned back on the headboard, and I opened the book. Now, the book had sections that focused on whatever the theme was. And with each new section, there is a Bible verse that starts it. And it just so happened that where I had stopped was at the end of one of those sections. I hadn't even remembered that. And when I opened it, what did I open it to? Jeremiah 29 verse 11. For I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord. Plans, you understand me? For you to prosper and not to harm you, to give you a future and a hope. And I just started to laugh. More tears running down my face. And in that moment, I understood at such a deep level that there was more to me more to life, more to this existence than I could understand. I knew that there was more. I couldn't even, I can't even explain in that moment, you know?
Can I tell you what that brings to mind?
Tell me.
An acorn.
Tell me about that.
An acorn has to go through freezing cold in order to germinate, in order to turn into a tree. Acorn, without going through the freezing cold, never gets genetically switched on to develop into a tree.
Wow.
So the reason I say that comes to mind is because the stressor that was apparent at that moment was for a reason. And that stressor had a purpose. And you nourished, at least, thank God, you nourished the road or the landmark that was placed before you, thank God. But you needed the stressor too.
Well, clearly. Man. But that was one of the aha moments.
Right.
And then that was 2014.
Right.
And then 2016, a co-worker, she had recently joined the company, and she made quite an effort to become friends with me. And I say that because I'm not very necessarily open to new people.
Really? I wouldn't have been able to tell.
It's the energy. There are people who, you know, when you see and you feel aligned. There's a connection. Right. And in that instance, I was also very busy. And lots of people came through the company and didn't stay. So you wait to see who is here first for a long. But she made an effort. And I remember after we had gotten to the place where we are more than acquaintances now, we'd talk a little bit more. One day she told me about a documentary that she had watched and that she had shared with former co-workers. And somebody reported her. She said to management, to their boss, to say that she was introducing them to a cult. And she says she's going to send it to me. And I was thinking, what could she possibly have had them watch? Now, I was intrigued because I was like, what could it be? So she says, she gave me the YouTube link. And I said, okay, when I go home, I'm going to watch it. Got home and I was busy. And then it got to 9 p.m. I didn't remember. And then she sent me a message to say, have you watched it? I quickly lied. And I said, I'm watching it now. Right. And just to make sure that it wasn't really a lie,
exactly.
I started watching it, thinking that even if I get to a few minutes of...
You started it.
But suppose I tell you, Dr. Goldson, it was called The Secret.
Oh.
Have you watched it?
No, I've not.
You should. It's on Netflix.
Okay.
So it started, and it started really eerily and weird, and I'm sitting there looking at television going, what is this? Because the music, you know. But then you see 10 minutes in, I was enwrapped. I was sitting up in my bed, because normally I go to sleep early.
Okay.
Right? And I thought I would have fallen asleep. But no, this thing had my full attention. And I sat up straight. And I'm just engrossed. And I'm looking at it half hour in. And I'm sitting there. And at that point, I'm thinking, listen, if this is a cult, you have to try it. That's what I thought. Right. But you know what they were talking about?
What?
So that documentary, it's not really a movie, as she called it. It's more of a documentary, and they have books and things. It was really talking about the law of attraction.
Okay.
And it's funny because at that time I'm 30 odd years old, and it's the first time that I'm really coming across that kind of in-depth information about the laws of attraction, which is, to me now at my young age now, that part of me is thinking, how could you have gone for so much out of your life without knowing about it?
Right.
But that is when what jumped out of me at me that night more than anything else was the fact that my thoughts played such a huge role in shaping my reality. And so because it covered lots of things, but that is the one that really stuck with me that night. And I decided that right then and there that, all right, I am going to be working on managing,
shaping your thoughts.
Yes, being more deliberate and intentional about how I think and how I speak.
Okay, there's a conversation that Lion and I had some weeks ago. I don't know if you ever heard of it, but it's ultimately the message is, it's better to speak to yourself than it is to listen to yourself.
Yeah, I hear Norman with that quite
right.
Yeah.
Because, if you consciously are going to you consciously came to work. And you had maybe a parking spot that you thought about, way that you walked in, way that you gathered your stuff in the car and sat down and started your day, right? So just like you have a conscious control over the movements of your day, so do your thoughts.
Yes.
Right? And I think without having the conversation, we become vulnerable to run away, uncontrolled, not even develop thoughts of our own.
Yes.
Right?
I understand the power of that at this point because I question things now and I pay attention to my thoughts. So when I just started that journey in 2016 is when I realized just how on autopilot my thoughts were and how negative they were all. Predisposed to being. It took weeks of struggling. I would be like, oh my God, I'm thinking like that again, and I'd have to stop it to do the work to bring it back. But now I don't struggle with that anymore.
Because it takes practice. And that's why I think the message that we're talking about right now is probably pretty important. Because there are different people in different phases of your life, different acorns, different times before the movie and after the movie, and different times before the stressor and after the stressor. But wherever you are right now, if at least if you hear this, that you don't have to give into the negative thoughts and that are basically liars.
Yes.
They are liars. They're a liar. And it'll have you into a spiral of somewhere that you never needed to worry about being in the first place. It's a very powerful thing that you actually have to practice. And I think it's something that you need to teach your children.
Yes.
And your grandchildren.
Yes.
Because when they're 20 years old, 25, 30, 18, whatever number, we can't say that their life is easy because no one's life was really easy. You deal with these things as they come. But if you can, yes, we want to teach young people to hustle. We want to teach them to thrive. You want to teach them to get the best, do work. But at the same time, to be mentally healthy and aware of healthy thoughts and your control of your own healthy thoughts. And if we could train that to our children, then they're going to teach their children and ultimately become healthier over a longer period of time.
Yes.
Right? So I think the message is for us, but it's for us to share.
Yes. For
sure. And everybody, even in your workplace, but especially in your family.
Definitely.
Especially you have to open up that conversation. And and I'm talking to parents now because parents, I have younger doctors who come and for 29 years we've been in business. And we've had young doctors who come through, learn, and maybe moved on or stayed. And I have an opportunity then to have conversations with them. And sometimes I'll have young men come in and sometimes young women. And we'll talk into work, but we'll get invariably into the life stuff. And sometimes you can't talk to your parents about certain things because they're your parents. And while they were your age at one point, they are still your parents. So there's a directive that they have to make sure you're okay. So it can sometimes fall in a very rigid way of speaking to your kids that the kids won't necessarily hear you as well. So I think it's important to balance out our parenting. Sometimes it's tough. Sometimes it's open and just listening. But also, making sure your child is able to talk to you about stuff like this. And you have to go down your road in order to be able to share it. Because it sounds like what I pick up from you, this is our first conversation, there's peace in which you are practicing what you're doing in life right now.
Yes,
right?
Yes.
And I'm sure that comes along with...
You see, there is so much I share. So when you talk about sharing information, I believe that that's a part of my purpose here, just in general. Okay. I don't believe in holding on to any knowledge or information that I come across just for me. I share it readily, willingly, right? And I have embraced that, as I said, as a part of my purpose so that I do it within everything that I do. So I've been in media for 20 odd years. I'm a trained psychologist with a bachelor's and a master's, and I'm in event management. So what I've done now is fused all of those things. So
you never knew how they were going to connect, right?
No, I didn't. Except when people thought, being in media and then studying psychology, even to do the master's after, people thought I was crazy, and I'm like, listen, this degree has not failed me ever, right? That's one. But two, I really didn't even at the time have a plan of how I was going to fuse them. It wasn't even that. I pursued psychology because it was a passion that I have.
And a curiosity.
Right. And so, but now when I've watched it all come together to the point where I'm now on the advisory board for my alma mater here. And one of the things I repeatedly tell students, whether it is their bachelor's that they're undertaking or their master's, is that listen, don't box yourself in terms of what you will use this degree to do. Right? Don't. No, as it comes on now to our families. So I talk to my daughter I have one child, about all the experiences that I have had and all the knowledge that I've gained from all the books, and I'll buy her the things, and she listens to some of the things. But I realize that when she's communicating with her friends, she sounds a lot like me. It's just that when she's talking to me, she doesn't sound like me.
Got it.
But I'm getting that, listen, this girl is, she's her own person.
Right.
She's 19, turning 20 soon.
I was just going to ask.
You know, she's her own person, and with her very distinct personality and all of that. But I realize that she also has gravitated towards a lot of the things that I have embraced without me fully realizing how it came about. And so I realize that we probably express some of it differently. But I am grateful for what I now know, and that I got the opportunity to learn it when I did, to share it with her. So she doesn't have to wait until she's 30 odd to get that knowledge, you know?
Right.
So when we talked about energy earlier on, I really love that, you know, and I don't want us to finish and gone off and don't come back to that,
Right.
because I think it's such a big deal, because I think about it as what animates us and what animates every single thing. That's life. That is everything.
Life. Right.
You walk into a room and there's energy in the space.
Right.
Whether somebody's in the room or not, based on what was going on in the space before you. And everything vibrates.
I was just going to use the word vibration. And everything vibrates.
Yes.
Okay. That's enough to tell me that if it's not straight and it's vibrating, there's energy in it.
Yes.
And even from the laws of physics, matter can neither be created nor destroyed.
That's right.
Energy can neither be created or destroyed. It can only be transferred into different
That's
things.
right. That's
so if that be the case, it's a fluctuating vibration that we're living in anyway. But then, okay, I don't know, we're running out of time. But I think it's important that we actually touch on then purpose. Right? Because, okay, well, I hear you talking about energy and its vibrations and movements. So what? Right? So what? And I believe meditation is really important, because you have to, and it's not just go into a quiet space, ring a gong. There's different forms of meditation for different times in your life, right? So, but connecting to your center is at the core of it. You know, I've heard it termed as mindfulness. You know, so that's important. Me personally, I get to the core purpose of it is we're living this life. We had nothing to do with our birth. We had nothing to do with that. God, two human beings. That was it. So we're birthed in this thing, but we're birthed in it with a purpose. So the point for me, at least, figuring out where does meditation come in, where does the conversation about energy come in, where does the focus on energy come in, where does chakras and balance and these things come in, is to get through this life of our purpose in a harmonious and peaceful way. That's why. There's things in the middle. We have the top, we have the bottom, and there's work and all these things, but we want to remain in peace within that vibration. Yes. And what does peace look like to you? You know, what does joy look like to you? A lot of people say there's difference between happiness and joy. You know, so you know, joy is usually found in purpose. Yes. Happy can be found in a party.
And it's fleeting. So when I think about happiness, I think of something that's fleeting.
Right.
Joy, on the other hand, is something that feels like it's coming from deep inside. And these days, I don't even talk about joy or happiness. I speak about living and staying in gratitude. So I focus on love and gratitude. So my daily affirmations and daily prayers and things, what I focus on is peace, gratitude, and just that sense of love and being fulfilled more than anything. So I recently lost my mother. Last weekend made it 1 year. Okay. So it's been rough. You know, it's been rough. But even as I go through the whole grieving process, and I realize that I've accepted that I'll grieve for the rest of my life, there is still that part of me, which I'm grateful for the journey that I've been on in terms of that deeper knowing and that deepening of my spirituality. I think prepared me
for that.
Yes, that I haven't lost my mind.
Right.
I am an only child.
Oh, okay.
And my mom and I were very close. Right. And her death was sudden, you know. And it is through the embracing and the knowing that there is no death the way we conventionally see and speak about or is taught about death. It's just a transformation.
Cycle.
You understand? And it made it easier because I described it. I remember saying to Norman some time ago that though I know that she's not dead,
right,
she's just not here physically, it still hurts like crazy. And I had an epiphany one day, and it was that, yes, you know this, Kadene, and you don't need to beat up on yourself when grief knocks you down.
Right.
Because, you know, that part of you going, but you know that, you know.
Right. Then you start just the guilt to build yourself up.
Yes.
That's a trap.
The reminder to myself, or the
right.
epiphany said, the physical part of you misses the physical part of her.
Mm-hmm.
So though she's with you forever, because for eternity, there is no separation from me and you. There is no separation from me and the ocean. There's no separation from me and the divine source. It's same with her, because we are all everything. We're
right.
just one.
Right.
We just are. But physical me misses physical her.
Yeah, I read something somewhere. Don't quote me on where the book came from, but it was a statement that I'll live with the rest of my life. We are undone by people. Meaning, and I put this picture in my head that I'm a person, but I have different pieces to me.
Yeah.
And those pieces that are held together by relationships with different people. And so I'm held together by the people I know, my society, my environment. And that's great. The humanness of it is great. I love that. But when we have these losses like you're describing with your mother, those pieces, those fissures become obvious.
Yeah.
And you're undone. And I think it's a beautiful thing. Because just to even recognize where those fissures and those gaps open up when we don't have in the physical sense of it anymore.
Yes.
Right? I think that's, again, lies in value and purpose of us being human beings and walking this earth during the time that we have it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I embrace it. So even through the pain and the grief, I embrace the opportunity to still be here. There's a part of me that believes that just us being here is the divine experience. Have you ever read Seat of the Soul?
I have not. But you were going to say the divine experience. It sounds like I can see where you're going.
Listen, I talk a lot. This is my world, you know. This is what I live in. And so I would love for you to read some of the books, or we can just chat about them another day, you know, or half a day. But the divine experiences itself through us.
Right.
Because we are divine.
Right. Absolutely.
So when you are everything you get to experience, I think it's a book that I came across that kind of description, and it resonated with me, because that's how I know what works for me.
Because if you don't put it down,
you understand?
If you finish the book, actually, if it doesn't just happen to sit there and like the title was interesting, and the cover looked really nice, boy, I couldn't get past page 15. Yeah.
But that was like an aha moment where it said, you know, the divine is everything and in everything, right. But the divine gets to experience itself through us, because, you know, there's an example there. Like, let me say this. I use this example a lot when I'm trying to explain. You go to the sea, you go to the ocean, and you have this cup. You take this cup and you fill the cup with ocean water. Mm-hmm. What's in the cup? It's the ocean.
Right.
It's the exact same thing, like this huge body of water. What happens is that it in this cup is the same thing. It just doesn't have the might and the strength of the entire of the ocean, right. But it's still the ocean, and that's who we are as divine beings. We are divine, and too many of us go through life not realizing that, not knowing that.
Yeah, that in itself, to me, I'm a very curious person. Mm-hmm. I like curiosity. I'm like you. I went back to school for different various things that didn't seem like it made sense at all, only to actually make sense years and years later. Yeah. Right. So I don't, you know, everyone has the choice to live the life they want to live, but without curiosity or without looking to experience life in different ways or open your mind up to different things and to be rigid in there, it seems like a waste to me because there is so much of it to live. Yeah. And then also what would be a waste is to live it in misery when you don't have to, or to focus on, to be trapped by those thoughts or those circumstances that you were born into, right? And that left scars and left long-lasting scars, and it's hard for some people to let go of because they hurt so bad. And so you become trapped by that energy. Right.
Yes.
And so when there's joy on the outside of that, and to me, I think that's why I think your message is very important, because it just takes a few people to infect a bunch of other people with positive energy and a different way of thinking about it, because we are out here.
Yeah, that's what I love about you, because note what I said when I heard you with that interview that day. It spoke to me. The energy transmitted through the airways to me, and I was like, oh my goodness, I sat up. You understand me? Right. And so I know the impact that we have on others, and this is why it's so important for me to share anything that I know or have experienced. I don't hide anything. So the good, the bad, the ugly, I tell people, because we're people and we all have the good, the bad, and the ugly,
Oh, so you're not a prisoner of pretense over here?
Oh God, no.
Oh no, you're not a pop.
Oh God,
prisoner of pretense. Oh no. Man,
I'm just my full authentic self.
You're out of the box. You're out of the box, huh?
24, yes. So listen, I tell people, and I love being how I am. I really do. And I try to encourage people to just be themselves.
That is funny to me. That is great.
I love that.
That is awesome, actually.
So I'm looking at you, and this chat is amazing, and I do hope that we get to do this again.
I'm sure we will.
But I'm talking to you, and I'm curious, because you look chill and zen. Yes. You look like you're at peace.
That's what you're picking up on?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Like you're at peace.
Okay.
So, and every now and again, I don't know about you, but every now and again, some things might be happening, especially because of what I went through recently or have been going through. Sometimes the peace is a little bit disturbed. So now I'm so in tune with myself that I feel it. Years ago, I felt off for years and didn't know why. And then when I figured it out, it was my peace. But that's a different story for a different day, because that's another one. But now I know when I'm not okay, I know it immediately. And even if a couple hours, I check in with myself and I'm like, why do I feel like that?
Right.
And then I'll try to do the assessment to work on it, So that's me and my peace. What do you do, Dr. Goldson, to maintain your peace and your zen and your, that calmness about your spirit? What are some of the practices that you do?
I'm going to say the first thing you said is key, because you have to be aware of you, and it takes time to even become aware of your own vibrations and your own things. So, but when you becoming aware, it becomes like a thing that you can predict, so you can get ahead of negative thoughts before they even take over, or get ahead of a day that could run itself before it goes there. So me personally, there's a few things. All right. So there's many people who are people pleasers. I happen to be a people pleaser. That's been my thing for most of my life. I think we grow up into that. But being aware, being okay to say no.
Yeah, that's not an easy one for most people.
That's not. Say no and don't feel guilty.
Yeah.
Don't say no and don't feel guilty. Just say no, and it's just know you're not being vindictive. Being okay with saying no and not feeling bad about it. And key is not beating yourself up about anything. That's a trap waiting to happen. So me personally, I just practice. Just if that thought comes in, you get rid of that immediately, quickly. It's done. It has no value at all. And then just recognizing again, and at the top of it for me, just recognizing I have a great deal with God. Awesome deal. At the basic of it, I could have a bad day. Joy could be fluctuating or not as high, but typically I run high anyway, so it's good. So for me, then if I walk into work and I'm not on 8 or 10, what's wrong with you? I get that. So it's fine. It's, just everybody, you're gonna have a balance. But the great deal is you've been given life. You don't have to beat yourself up. God's gonna forgive you for everything, and everything's gonna be okay. What? That's the best deal ever. Just trust that everything is going to be okay. Just trust it's all going to be okay. Believe that truly, and you don't even have to worry about nothing else. It's not even yours to worry about.
I love it.
But we all are not perfect. We all are going to fluctuate. But that to me is key. Don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it.
Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Goldson, I'm going to leave it right there for today because don't worry about it.
Right.
That's a perfect message to leave with you, for you to hold on to. Don't worry about it. And I love what he was saying, because it sounds like giving yourself grace, and that's a big deal for me. I keep reminding my listeners, give yourself grace and give others. But, let's start with you. Give yourself grace. Dr. Goldson, it has been a pleasure speaking with you today.
Casey, the pleasure was all mine. Thank you
very
much
for having me.
See you back
soon. Sure.
Absolutely.
All right.
Okay.